Welcome to our podcast, Inspiring Living, with me, Mark Candelaria. I am an architect, blogger, traveler, chef, father, and husband. I am the founder and now a partner of a fabulous 20-person architecture firm specializing in high-end residential architecture, designing amazing homes across the country. Over the last 20 years, we have hosted tours to Italy, Spain, and soon the Oregon wine country. And in the course of all this, I have met a lot of interesting people who truly inspire me. Our podcast is about all the opportunities that are right there in front of us to inspire living. Yes, we will talk about architecture and design, but every week we will venture into all sorts of topics that will inspire you, teach you, and motivate you to inspire living every day. My guests will include a wide gamut of amazing people, from those in the design industry to clients to real estate professionals, chefs, artists, sports figures, and philanthropists, and people who just flat out get it. Sit back and enjoy, and let's have some fun exploring all the opportunities that are just waiting for us. Please subscribe and get ready to be inspired every week. Okay, as my dad says, here we go. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for always tuning into our podcast. Well, here we are in March already. I can't believe it, but I'm loving the weather, as you can't quite beat it here in Arizona in the springtime. It is just fabulous, and pretty soon I'm starting to smell the orange blossoms, and it just reminds me of my first visit here to Arizona, and definitely made me make a U-turn and come right back, and been here ever since, roughly some 40 years. Which, by the way, today marks a very special day for me. It's the day I celebrate the 40th anniversary of my first day of work in an architect's office. That office being the offices and studio of the late George W. Christiansen, who I was blessed to work with for nearly 18 years before setting off on my own to start Candelaria Design Associates, which we will be celebrating our 23rd year anniversary in August. Yep, 40 years ago, I walked in with all of my hand drafting tools to that little Adobe office on the southeast corner of 24th Street in Campbell, and started my first day of my official architectural career. I was 21 years old, full head of hair, and all the dreams and aspirations of what was to come. I remember the fear and exhilaration of that first day, and even the first house and drawings I was asked to do. It's amazing what has transpired in the 40 years since that first day, and I cannot even begin to thank the many people who have helped me along the way, and all the truly inspiring projects I've had the fortune to work on during this 40-year run. It's been spectacular, and it's a bit emotional for me, to be really honest with you. So, well, to celebrate and look back at this journey, I have recorded two podcasts, one with two very special people in my life, Brian Cassidy, President of CCBG Architects, and Dianne Kleber, both who were there with me on my first day at George's studio. Then I will flash forward 40 years for another podcast to where I am today with my partners here at Candelaria Design, those being Evelyn Jung, Meredith Thompson, and our newest partner, Tim Mathewson. And we will talk about the journey since starting Candelaria Design in 1999 to where we are today, some 23 years later. Okay, these are both fun podcasts, and you will get a good sense of my 40-year journey of being an architect here in the Valley. Okay, let's get to this first podcast, as it is definitely a special one. Let's go back to that first day on the job on March 4th, 1982. Here we go. Okay, I am so thrilled to have these two people here in our Candelaria Design kitchen studio this morning. You see, on March 4th, I will be celebrating my 40th anniversary of my first day on the job in an architect's office, and I have with me today the two people who were there on that day. I have Principal and President of CCBG Architects, Brian Cassidy. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning, Mark. Congrats.
Well, thank you. Well, you guys will see you had a big part in all this happening. So, and then I have another special person in both of our lives, our good friend, Dianne Kleber. Good morning, Dianne.
Good morning, Mark.
You ran George Christiansen's office, and my first day you were there, and then many years thereafter, ultimately coming to Candelaria Design Associates for quite a stint with us, too. So welcome so much.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Okay, so good to have both of you here. We had a dinner here several months ago, and that was a fun evening, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was great.
Trying to remember, how long ago was that? Like about
I think it was May.
May of last year already? Yeah, that was a fun evening.
Yeah.
It was just us and our significant others.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And we kind of relived some of the stories that we're going to share with our listeners today. So we'll see how we do. We haven't had anything to drink other than coffee and tea. So
Not yet.
yeah, I think this will be a pretty tame recording so far. We'll see. So great. It's great to have both of you here. Can you believe it's been 40 years?
No, that's amazing.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah, it went by a lot faster, and it only felt like 50 years.
So, Diane, how and when did you start with George?
Well, that's kind of a long story. I met George in Illinois when he lived in Wilmette
Wow.
because my husband at that time was from Wilmette, and George was his Sea Scout leader.
Okay.
And so that's how I initially met him. And then we came out here for a vacation. We went to a conference in Tucson and then came up here to see George. We stayed with George and his mom,
Mumsy.
And on our drive back, we were both kind of in awe of Arizona after coming from Milwaukee, where it's spring and it's cold and it's miserable.
Yeah.
So we got back, and Mike quit his job. We sold our house, and July 5th we were here.
Wow. And you started working for George right away?
No, then Mike and I got divorced. And I was looking for a job, and George said, "Why don't you come and work for us?"
Awesome.
So that's what I did.
Now, what year was that, roughly? Do you know?
Well, let's
remember?
see. We moved here in 74, so maybe 76, 77,
Yeah.
something like that. I worked for the Madison School District for a while the kids were still in school.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah,
That's amazing. So then you're working for George over in the little office on 24th Street, right?
right.
The old Lon McGargy building that George
Right.
converted into a studio,
Right.
right?
Uh-huh.
And you ran the front desk. You ran the whole firm, let's just face it.
Well, yeah.
And knowing George, I mean, you ran the firm,
Yeah.
right, Brian?
Absolutely.
So that's how it got started, huh?
Yeah, it was just that easy. Just that easy.
That's crazy. And what about you, Brian? How did you and George connect?
Well, I met when I was a student at ASU School of Architecture. George was one of those eccentric professors, and we had one thing in common outside of architecture, and that was drinking. So I always felt like my qualifications to start at the firm could draw and can drink. So it was a good combination. So I was one of, the firm historically had a pipeline into ASU.
Yeah, 'cause of George.
They would hire 1 or 2 graduates every year. So
Yep.
I was the one that they hired the summer of 1981, and John Williams also. So
Okay.
2 from my class, and we all started in that summer. So for me, it's been 40-plus years.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, so God bless John Williams. He
Yeah.
passed on
It's been about 4 years.
4 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a fun office with that group. It was, what I remember was Fred Gualda, John Williams, you, Jim Roberts, Dave Jones, Werner
Yeah.
Werner
Dick
Wolf,
Miller,
Dan Dick Miller.
and George. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was about 10 of us.
I think that was it though at that point.
Yeah.
From what I remember.
We couldn't have fit another body in the building. You had to be skinny to work there.
Yeah,
'cause it was
yeah.
such a small building.
We wouldn't fit there now. That's for darn sure. So my journey to George started with me taking Cal Straub's class. Remember Cal Straub?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I was just starting at ASU, and then George was a guest lecturer, and I thought, wow, how cool is this guy? I can remember his lecture. I remember him walking up with his tennis shoes, and he was
Yeah.
just trying to be cool with the kids, and everyone related to George. I mean, just it just looked like a fun guy and he always had his slideshow with his slide carousel. Remember the slide room?
Yeah, for
Yep.
sure.
We still have a lot of those slides.
Do
in the
ya?
office. Yep.
Oh, that's really
Yeah.
cool. And then I thought, okay, I want to work for this guy somehow in some way. And, little did I know the route I would take, but I ultimately ended up there. So, at the time, not shortly after that class, I remember getting married and then having to get a job. And I got a job at a steel detailing company, Schuff Steel, a subsidiary of one of their companies doing billboards. That was my big start. And they put a moratorium on billboards after I was there for about 6 months, and they laid me off.
Huh.
And so I guess it was February or March of 1982, and I'm looking for a job, looking through the paper because there was no,
Right. No
Indeed
internet.
or Workspace or any of those type of things. And shuffling through the paper, I saw George Christiansen's name pop up, and I go, "Oh God, I would love to work for him." And it was a draftsman job. And so I remember, like I was telling you, just staying up all night long, putting together a portfolio, copying drawings out of my one of my architecture drafting books, and had a couple renderings and drawings, hand drawings that I'd done, which I think really resonated with Dave Jones and Dick Miller because they're the two that interviewed
Right.
me. And I remember going there and sitting down in the office and talking to them, showing them my work, and I finally finished with saying, "Look, guys, I want this job, and I'll work for free. I mean, you guys just pay me whatever you think I'm worth, and I'll be happy." And 2 weeks later, you called and told me I had the job.
Right.
And
Right.
I think you called me Markle Sparkle then, too.
Did
maybe.
I really? Right away?
Right away. Probably didn't, but that's how I remember the
Yeah.
story. And I remember coming in that first day. I was so nervous, and I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what I'd be doing. And I think the job that they gave me to work on was the Davidson residence up in Carefree, if I remember right. And everything was hand-drawn back then, guys. I mean, there
Right.
was no CAD. There was no computer.
I know.
Computer hadn't even been invented yet, other than the big giant mainframes at IBM.
Right.
There were no personal computers. So it was a drafting table, and I think we were drawing ink on Mylar or pencil on vellum.
Yeah, both.
Yeah, both. And so I walk in, I got all my drafting tools with me, and I'm kind of in the back corner by the printing machine. And Brian was sitting right in front of me. I think we used to call it butt to butt and cheek
Face to face, butt to butt.
Yeah. We used to have that saying. I remember that. And I sit there and look at my drafting table, and it's got some like parallel bar thing across the front of it. I'm like, but it wasn't attached. It was like in a box, I think. Right, Brian?
It was, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like looking at this and trying to figure out what to do. And Brian's kind of watching me, laughing his ass off. And he finally turns and he goes, let me help you with that. And I think you ended up putting it on there for me.
Probably so.
Yeah. And I was like, okay.
You could draw, but I don't think your other dexterity.
No, I tell people right now the only power tool I can operate is a cell phone. So, and it hasn't changed in 40 years. So, you got me to work, and like I said, I was working on Davidson, drafting things, and I wasn't really sure what I was drawing most of the time. And I'd ask Brian questions and John Williams questions, and then one of the other first jobs that I worked on was the Van Houten residence.
Oh, I remember them.
And I remember being in a couple meetings. They brought me in for some reason, and I remember sitting there with Jim Van Houten and his wife, and they'd bring their little son, Jameson, who was 3 at the time, and he'd sit in the meetings. And maybe they brought me in to entertain him. I think that was the reason. Now that I think about it, I go, okay, now I know I was there. But I would sit there and go through the stuff. Well, flash ahead 34 years later, I ended up designing a house for Jameson Van Houten.
Oh, no kidding.
Isn't that cool?
Oh, wow.
So I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull that off in the next 30 years. I'll be about 92 with Jameson's kids, but we'll see what happens. But
yeah.
it's kind of cool, like we were talking earlier, how these things come full
Come around.
circle,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that was kind of my first day, and lots of great memories. So George's office was quite the place. I mean, we had some good times there, didn't we?
It was the true work hard, play hard atmosphere. Yeah, and it was very casual.
Very casual, yeah.
Since I'm still with the predecessor firm, we're trying to maintain that same culture.
Yeah.
There are no name tags. There's not even signs on the bathrooms. It's very casual. So.
Exactly. Well, I remember one time we had to go to some event that required a tie, and I brought a tie from somewhere. I don't know where I got one. Maybe one of my dad's old ties, knowing me at the time then. Things have definitely changed in that realm since then. And I remember trying to put it on, and Brian again just kind of turned and looked at me, goes, okay, it's the Mayline dude again. He's having trouble with his tie today. And I think you stepped in and taught me how to tie a tie, Brian.
I did. We used to wear ties and sports coats to work almost every day.
You were a good sport coat. That's where I first saw sports coats, was with Brian.
Really?
Yeah, I remember we'd park at the St. Thomas parking lot across the street, and we'd both get there about the same time. And Brian always had these really cool, I thought they were jackets, and I'm like, that's a cool jacket. Where do you get that? It's not a jacket, Mark. It's a sports coat. I'm like, oh, I gotta get me one of those. So you might have been casual, but you were always pretty dapper, Brian.
Well, thanks.
Yeah. So we had the old office there. I know technology had changed quite a bit. You did all the type. We didn't have any computers.
No, thank goodness the typewriter was electric.
It was an electric typewriter, but you still had to do whiteout tape or something like
and
that.
the whiteout stuff that is in the little bottles. Yeah.
Yeah, and you'd get a stack, right? We had a basket next to your desk. Yep. That's what I remember. And we'd put all of our handwritten notes that you'd have to decipher, or we would do the tape recorder. We did have the tape recorder a few times on punch list and stuff.
Yeah,
that had to be
I'd
interesting.
Had a machine, and I'd click it and listen, and then backspace, and click it and listen and backspace.
All day long.
All day long.
Yeah. So at the office, you ran everything, right? I mean, you ran all the business receipts. I mean, George didn't do any of that.
No. No, but his brother Don had an office in the back, and he was kind of responsible for the accounting portion of it.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I thought he was a lawyer.
He was.
Yeah,
But he
so
took
he-
care of the bunny.
Yeah, there's a great story about George that we learned later. He would pull a check out of the checkbook
Oh,
that was
yes.
dated way down the numbering system so he could go get something. And he always thought that the checks would only clear in order, not when they hit the bank. So he believed that, I think, till the day he died.
I think
my
so.
God.
And it just screwed up balancing the checking account like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah, because you get these rogue checks that were just
Yeah.
coming in at rogue times.
Right.
Oh my
right.
gosh. Yeah, he was quite the guy, wasn't he?
He was a character.
He was a character. I
Yeah.
still remember one of my favorite stories was he had that trip to Dallas for I don't know which project it was, and we loaded them all up with the drawings. We had them all teed up. He took them out, put them on top of his car because he was loading things in the car, and then
Yeah, he was on his way to the airport.
he's on his way to the airport, and so he goes back, gets something else, hops in the car, drives down 24th Street to the airport, and then he calls us from either Dallas or from the airport. Brian, you forgot to give me the drawings. And Brian's like, no, you took them all out to your car, don't you remember? They're not here. And we go, well, where in the heck are
They're
they?
all over
we
24th Street.
found him. Yeah,
we,
they
we,
were-
we look out the front window of the office. It looked right down 24th Street. It looked like a snowstorm. Remember that?
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, my God. And we had the interns.
Handful of interns were running up and down 24th Street trying to grab them before they got run over. So,
Well, I think a
Yeah.
few of them got
Yeah.
ran over, and we repackaged them and FedExed them to Dallas.
Yeah.
And I could just see George presenting these drawings with tire tracks on them. Oh, my God, that was
too
hilarious.
funny.
And we used to have some pretty good parties. We used to have the infamous holiday party there at George's office.
I don't know when it started, but it was probably the mid '70s, and it was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it got even more fun over the next handful of 10 years. And it got so much fun that we couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
It was almost scary fun. But man,
Oh,
it
my
was-
gosh.
I
Yeah.
have more stories. We could spend 5 podcasts talking about that.
Well, that's what I was
But
saying.
it
We
was
used
really
to
great
fill
fun.
that whole little office with just bodies and food, and your desk in the front would become the
Right.
bar.
Yeah.
And I think we had food probably over the drafting tables. But I mean, there were people outside the door
Right.
coming to that party.
Right.
And like I said earlier, I learned you could squeeze about 5 people into that shower when things got really rowdy. So those were the days back in
Yeah,
the early '80s. I mean,
And
it was
One
crazy.
of the
Yeah.
neat things about that holiday party was it literally was the architects' annual reunion.
Yeah.
In Phoenix.
Yes, it was.
It really
It
was.
was,
And
yeah.
It was just,
Everyone would pull
and
together.
we had people that we never invited, but they found their way there. We had people we purposely didn't invite because we knew they would find their way there, and it was like a contest.
Right.
So from the boys,
And then we always had to have, there was a theme for the office picture.
Yeah,
every
every year
year.
for the Christmas card,
Yeah.
for the
Right.
holiday card.
Holiday card. Yeah. Well, it was a Christmas
It
card
was a
then.
Christmas
Yeah,
card.
back those days, it was
Yeah,
still
it was
a Christmas card. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Those used to be a lot of fun. I remember we did one at Casablanca. I think that was the year before I came, and then we did a cool one at the Bomber Jet. Remember out in Mesa?
Yeah.
Falcon Field.
That was a
That
very
was
cool
probably the
photo.
best one.
I think that was one of the best ones. Yeah. So every year was a different theme, and we would all be in costume. Yeah, those were awesome. You guys still have those somewhere?
We do.
I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be cool to see some of those.
Yeah.
Those are really cool. I think one year after we formed CCBG, we were the Bee Gees. Remember that?
Yep.
I had the long hair, and I was like
cute.
John Travolta, and oh my God, that's so
That's
dang.
great.
We were the CCBGs.
Yeah.
That was a good one. So at the time I joined the firm, it transformed from George W. Christiansen and Associates to Christiansen, Roberts, Jones, and George added the partners Jim Roberts and Dave Jones about that time. So that was short lived, right, Brian?
That started in the spring of 1983 because I was actually on a vacation that week, and I got back, and there was a lot of tension in the room when I got back. But within 30 days, it was the beginning of the end of that partnership, and the firm turned into, within 90 days, Roberts Jones formed their own firm.
Their own firm,
and,
yep. Christiansen
and then-
Miller.
and then the firm became Christiansen Miller. Dick Miller came in as a partner.
Yeah, yeah, and I was obviously kind of, like I said, in the back corner of everything, and I was totally oblivious to any of this going on. I mean, as far as I knew, I walked in every day, and I just hope I got a check on Friday. I
Yeah.
could care less what you called it.
Well, I knew that
Well,
was
you had to have
away-
been in the middle of all of that.
I knew that they were going to split the sheets, and Dick Miller, bless his heart, couldn't be there when it happened, and so he left early that day. And
So you were probably pretty involved in some of those
yeah,
conversations
it was,
and
that was tough because
Was
you know
it?
you care about everybody,
right.
and the fact that it's breaking all of this wonderfulness up was really hard.
Right. And Jim and Dave had been with George for quite a while, right?
Oh yeah.
Quite a few years.
Yeah, I don't know how long they were there, but
Huh.
I
What
think they
happened?
came
I mean, from
straight
your perspective, because you were right in the middle of it, and
I think they wanted to do their own thing. They wanted more say-so in
how things went,
how
and
things
how
went.
operations would run.
right, and
And George was, George.
right, and that wasn't going to happen.
Right.
I mean, he would probably say that would be okay, but when it gets down to the bottom line, it's like it's still George's show.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know how that goes. I know how
Yeah.
that feels. It's
Yeah.
tough.
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
is.
you
It's
built that
real hard.
baby, and then there's other people coming in, and, they want to have their say, which rightfully so. If you're going to make them partners, they need to have
Right.
a say in how things go, and you gotta play nice or it doesn't work.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
So you saw that from your perspective. What did you see from your perspective?
Well, it
Brian?
was kind of like that movie, The War of the Roses. It felt like somebody had drawn a line down the middle of the studio, and you had to pick a side.
Yeah.
And I was loyal to George because I knew George, and the talent in that firm was really amazing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I stayed
it
with
was.
George. And another thing, I did this research on George's career about 4 years ago. Our little firm spun off at least 17 firms in
Yeah.
the valley here, of which these 17 firms are now the partner owners of those practices.
Isn't that crazy?
Oh,
Pretty
wow.
amazing to
That's the
think.
talent he picked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's big testament to George. He could spot talent. I
yeah,
mean,
that's for sure.
and it was funny.
Yeah.
I was emailing with Jim Roberts this past week.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, I'm still doing stuff out of Casablanca after 40 years.
Oh, wow.
In fact, I just got a text from somebody just a minute ago asking what the floor tiles are in the portal when if they're historic. I'm like, oh my God. So anyway, I reached out to Jim to ask him, and I was going to try to have him here as a surprise guest,
Yeah,
but he
that
was out
would've
of
been
town.
fun.
I was hoping I'd get him here because he said, yeah, I'd come if you were doing it a different time, but he mentioned the fact that there was just so much talent in the office, and so I was one of the ones who chose to go with Jim and Dave. I'd only been there a short time, so my loyalty, I just wanted to get a
Right.
paycheck. And I thought, well, a new firm, I might get some, I might come in at the ground floor, and who knows where that could lead.
Right.
Right. Otherwise, I'm here at the bottom, so from my perspective, it being 22, 23 years old, I thought, what do I have to lose,
Right.
So I went with Jim and Dave I think I was only there for about 6 months. And I was telling you the story. I remember after my first review, I was making $5.65 an hour. You were making $6, Brian? You might have gotten a few raises
you were
since
getting
then.
screwed, Mark. Yeah. What can I say? Yeah.
$5.65 an hour. And I remember about maybe 2 or 3 months after I started working with them, it was time for my review or something like that. And Jim had put together a whole spreadsheet of where, how our salaries would work each year for 20 years. And he had the spreadsheet there. He did it on the IBM. We had the IBM computer then.
Right.
We had one for the whole office. And, I looked at this thing, and I looked down 20 years, and I was making maybe $7 an hour. I'm like, this isn't going to work for me. So I remember, Brian, and you and I had stayed in touch because we virtually lived.
We did. We lived about 100 yards apart.
Yeah, we lived in some wild condos down at 3rd Street in Thomas. And so we'd grab dinner once in a while, and he kept saying, when did you come back? Why don't you come back to see Christiansen Miller at the time? And so I finally decided, you know what? I'm going to go back and work with George and work with Brian. And Brian goes, we got some great jobs coming, got some great projects. We'll get you involved in some cool things. And I'm like, at that time they had much better projects than
Yeah.
what Jim and Dave had going on. We were working on some PF West apartments, and I think you guys were still doing the PF West apartments. Actually, they had
Yeah,
another
I think
client that was doing apartments, and it was not fun.
There was a lot of work to split at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as unfortunate it was, everybody still gets along, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
and even though George might have been probably my mentor just from the culture and the world, Dave Jones was my go-to really
Technical guy.
understand practice.
Yeah.
Dick Miller was the
Yeah.
go-to if you wanted to make sure a roof didn't leak. Yes,
Right.
Yes, Dick
How to
do it.
detail it. Yep.
If you wanted to know how to make it look good, you asked Dave how to do it.
Yep.
And if you wanted to ask somebody to see just the big idea, you'd talk to George.
Yeah.
But not for
Yeah.
details.
Not for details. No.
No.
No. George is the Teflon president, though. I mean, that guy could screw things up like so bad.
Yeah.
And you'd go into the meeting and go, oh, this is going to be a disaster. And then you'd walk out and everyone's hugging George. When are we going to go have dinner? And it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, he was incredible.
Yeah.
He could get away with. He had like 9 lives.
Yeah, I
there
was just
was
what
a
I was gonna
Wickenburg
say.
client that brought their whole family in for Christmas to see the model of their new custom home up at Los Caballeros, and nobody made the model because nobody knew
About-
it.
Yeah.
Oh no.
And somehow he salvaged that.
Well, he
I don't
probably
know
did
how
one
he
of
did.
his sketches, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So I remember Kevin Reese. Remember those apartments?
Yeah.
Yep.
And Kevin was one of the first guys to have a cell phone. I mean, the thing was like a giant brick, you know. And George didn't know he had a cell phone. And so Kevin called him one day and said, hey, George, how are the plans looking on our apartment project? Oh, Kevin, they're looking great. You've really got to come in here and see them. Okay, I will. Swing by. Yeah, come on by. Let me know when you're coming. Sure, I'll head that way. You know, George starts scrambling to get something. You know, there was
Yeah.
really nothing drawn. Kevin walks in virtually within seconds because he was calling him from his cell phone. And I remember George's eyes just like, Kevin, you're here. How did you get here so fast? And he shows him the cell phone. He goes, well, what is that thing?
Oh no.
I would never forget that. It was just hilarious. But there's infinite stories like that about George, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they go on forever. And I know, Dianne, you're probably in the middle of salvaging a lot of them.
Yeah. Well, the thing that was really difficult is that remember Jeffrey Jones, who was the errand person.
Yeah. I still run into him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I ran into him hiking on 32nd Street Trail
Oh,
now
did
and then. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And he became George's private errand boy.
Yeah.
And we'd have the whole day planned for Jeffrey, and George would send in Prescott. You know, and it's like, what are you doing?
Sometimes half the office was up in Prescott
Yeah.
doing something, or they're at 12th Street trimming oleanders and cleaning the pool. And
Yeah.
we're trying to get a deadline out, and we're like, where is everybody?
Yeah.
Oh, they're up at 12th Street doing pool work. We're like, what?
Yeah.
Remember that?
Exactly.
That
exactly.
used to get some people pretty riled
yeah.
up.
Yeah.
That's why
that
I
was
couldn't
really
wait
hard.
to hire the next ASU grad the next summer.
So you get off that list. I remember you did some stuff at Witten.
Oh yeah, they George and his brother Don bought a house on this must have been about 30th Street
Yeah.
north of Osborne, and it was like 4 acres, and I actually was the caretaker there for about 6
Oh
months.
my.
So I stayed there
That's right.
and had to mow a lot of grass, clean the pool, and there was a tennis court, and it was fun. And they eventually sold it,
Yeah.
but they were going to redevelop it into some infill housing because George was always talking infill development.
Right.
Unfortunately, he was way
Ahead of his
the
time.
curve
Yeah.
for that.
Well, how many concepts did we do on 12th Street? I mean,
What people you had to work there to understand it, but every summer the new guy usually was asked to go measure the house
Again.
by yourself. It's always in the summer. It was never in
December.
February.
Yeah.
It was July or August, and it's really hard to measure a house by yourself. So you got to hold both ends of a tape and write down and sketch.
or grab Mumsy.
And then
Yeah.
and then you realized about 3 years later that there was a 1977 version of the house plans and a 78, and every year somebody was tasked doing the same damn thing,
Right.
Yeah.
and nothing ever came of it. So
Yeah.
That's crazy. I
And
know.
then George bought the property on, was it 56th Street? Remember that?
on McDonald.
Oh, McDonald.
McDonald.
Yeah.
Yeah.
52nd and McDonald.
Yeah.
Yep.
But he never did anything with it. And then
Oh, we'd draw, and it was always like during the holidays. Like he would grab a bunch of students. We need to do a charrette, and it was like during the holidays. We're like, I gotta get this done. I need to get bids.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't recall. I recall seeing so many interns get suckered into doing that. I never worked on 12th Street. I never worked on 52nd ever. I never did it. I
You're
know. I
lucky.
think it was because I was married. He didn't.
Yeah.
He didn't ask me. I think
Yeah,
that's. I
that's
think that's what.
probably
It was.
right.
I mean, it ultimately didn't matter anyway. I got divorced too, so
Yeah.
worked our butts off all the time. But 83, 83 or 84, I came back.
Weren't we sitting at one of the Christmas parties in the back patio having one too many beverages? And I think I kind of roped you back in at that.
That's exactly
Yeah,
what it
kinda
was.
remember,
That's exactly.
like,
I
saying,
remember
"You
the
gotta come
spot.
back. We need you.
Yeah. It was back in the back patio by the model room.
Uh huh.
Yep,
Yeah.
I do remember that. And it was right after that I came back.
Yeah.
Right after the holiday party. You're right. That's exactly when it was. So it probably was 84, early 84.
Could have been, yeah.
Yeah.
Probably the beginning of 84.
Yeah. And one of the first projects you guys put me on was Enchantment, which, is still a great place.
Yeah.
And I worked on that for 3-4 years. And then Casablanca Phase 2. And off I went, and from 84 to 87's when we became partners. Dick Miller, I guess, retired or wanted to retire.
I think so. I think he retired.
Yeah. And Dick Miller was great. I mean, I loved working with that man. He was
Yeah,
just
he
so
was
smart and
really
just so much
cool.
fun. He's the king of one-liners,
Yeah.
His lines would just crack you up,
Yeah. He'd sit in the whether it
closest
was
to so he could see who was coming in and out the door.
Right. Yeah. But he was like there, and then I was outside in the entryway.
Yeah.
And I could see him, and he'd sit back there and he'd sing, and he'd do all the red lines, and he'd make these wild remarks.
Yep.
He was really a cool guy.
Yeah. He drank a lot of coffee from what I remember.
Yeah, he did.
He drank coffee and smoked all
Yeah,
day.
smoked. Yeah.
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 And then we still smoked in the office. And he had
Yeah.
his little ashtray
Yeah,
that
I think he
sucked
had
the
one of
smoke.
those little filters, and he had a little battery-operated coffee warmer to put his little mug on.
And he'd just go.
all day,
Yeah.
And he had that big copper-colored Suburban or whatever it was. Or
Yes.
He could take the whole office to lunch. in
Yeah.
that car. That's how big it was.
Yeah, where did we used to go to lunch? Not Macayo's. What was the one on
It was
16th
La
Street?
Placita.
La
It
Placita.
was this great Mexican restaurant owned by an Asian family. Do you remember?
Oh no.
And we go there at least once a
Oh,
week.
at least once
I
a
mean,
week.
that was back in the day when you actually took people from the office and you went and sat down and had lunch. And
Yeah.
it
Right.
didn't involve a drive-through.
Yeah, and there's no
or
cell
takeout
phones, or you'd
Right.
actually sit and talk to each
delivery.
other.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually it was
Right.
fun. That's part of the culture that kind of gets lost in the design world.
Totally gets lost. So yeah, so from 84 to 87, we're pretty much working our butts off. Dick Miller retires, and that's when we formed CCBC.
Yep.
That was Christiansen, Cassidy, Billington. Kim Billington joined forces with us about
Yep.
the same time I came back.
Yep.
And Candelaria, that's CCBC. And we
Mm-hmm.
had Gosney, and there was
Randy
Montello,
We
and
probably were
Catherine Hayes,
12
who
or
started her own
14
firm.
people. Yep.
Yeah. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah, and what's amazing about those days is here you and I are partners in what turned out to be a pretty prolific firm.
Yep.
And I was the president, and I was 28 years old.
Yeah.
And you were
26,
younger.
27.
Yeah.
Yeah. And no
Here
license.
We are,
Yeah.
leading the design firm.
Yeah, it's crazy. I was talking to my mom and dad about it the other day. It's like, 1987, we start the firm. 1980, I was shoveling coal in the Durango narrow gauge train.
Oh, you're kidding.
So I went from that to
Oh my
that in
gosh.
just a little under 7 years.
Wow.
Which is just
That's
incredible.
incredible.
When you look back at it and go, it just shows that if you just apply yourself, and we were talking about this earlier, how hard we used to work.
Yeah.
I mean, we worked our butts off. We were there all the time.
Remember my slogan, a 3-day weekend was a chance to get another 30 hours of work in.
Yeah, and you saw the other one.
Until I
I
got married. at
The other
least.
one I tell people all the time that you used to say too, every day is Friday night and every morning is Monday morning or something like that.
No, every day's Monday and every night is Sunday night.
There you go.
Yeah.
I say it doesn't even matter at this point. It's just
Yeah.
one big blur, but it's still like that.
But I think the neatest thing about that office and at that time was there wasn't all the electronic stuff, and everybody had to do it by hand, but everybody worked together.
Yeah.
If there was a deadline, everybody worked together to complete that deadline. And you could feel the tension building in the drafting room when everybody was working.
Yeah, when it would
But-
be all hands on deck.
Yeah, and everybody was doing it. And then you'd get it finished, and everybody go, and then the beers and the scotch and all that would happen. But it was everybody. It
Yeah.
wasn't. It
What
wasn't
color was the Formica in the back kitchen?
It was like a maroon color, as I recall, kind of a.
And then those
Not
crazy
really.
tiles
Yeah.
and the
Yeah,
backsplash.
Yeah.
I mean, how many hours did we spend in that little back kitchen?
Oh, I mean, you
A
wouldn't
lot.
even. Again, you had to be skinny to work in the office. It was so small and dusty and the whole bit. But
Yep.
boy, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
working there. So
George would bring that bottle of scotch, and we're
parking
like,
was
Right.
here we
always
go.
a drama.
Yep.
Where
Yeah.
we used to have to park over at the church.
We parked at St.
until we
Thomas.
became partners, and we got the privilege of parking on the
I
property.
don't know if I ever did. I think I kept it at St.
Yeah.
Thomas.
I
though.
rode my bike. Remember
I
that?
couldn't get out of that parking lot. I was like, I'm parking back there. But I do remember when we came back, we were so busy in '84. You bought a really nice car. You bought a Mercedes. I bought a BMW. I mean, I was cruising. I was 24, had a BMW, and
I think we went from $6 to like $7 an hour,
Yeah.
so we could afford those nice cars. So.
it was
Nobody believes what salaries were back in those days,
or
No.
benefits.
but we didn't know any better. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I wasn't getting health benefits because at that point I was single, healthy. And young,
George told
so
you,
it
right?
didn't matter. Yeah,
You're
you
young
don't
and
need
healthy.
health insurance.
Right.
You're fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then we had the George years. We then moved downtown in '93, roughly.
Yeah, it's been 29 years.
Yeah, we moved there in '93. Did the office there on First Street in
in
Garfield,
Garfield.
which was a cool building.
That was neat because
Yep.
it was divided.
Yep.
Yep.
We had our own little quads, and we had the big conference room and big studio, and it was a nice space.
And
Yeah.
then all the interns or whatever, it was like the puppy room across the
puppies.
back.
The
Yeah.
puppies. We used to call them the
Because-
puppies.
and
I haven't heard that
remember
phrase
why
in a
we
long
called them
time.
Puppies?
No.
Because they would come up to your desk smiling and their tail wagging, and we nicknamed them puppies, always looking for something.
But
fun
I'd have to
to
take
jump
stuff
on.
back and forth.
Yeah.
And I'd walk in there, and it was like chaos. They're shooting airplanes. They've got rubber bands with paper clips and all this kind of stuff. And and the funny thing was Jeff Innes was in them amongst them, and
Yep.
he was like a fish out of water. And I just finally stood there and said, "What are we charging this to?"
This time to
And everybody just kind of stopped.
realize, hey, we're in business
you-
here.
Yeah.
This isn't
Right.
studio in college.
You were the killjoy. Yeah. we
Yeah.
were. And if you remember, Kim designed that space.
Yeah.
We decided to put the pencil in one hand, so Kim got the honors of designing it.
Yep.
And we built out about 75% of the improvements, including
As a
the
staff.
framing. As a staff.
Oh,
yeah.
really?
Oh yeah.
Oh my God!
We used to work on Saturdays and Sundays and after
yeah.
work, after
Yeah,
hours.
it took about
Wow.
5 months. We didn't do any plumbing or
Right.
electrical work, but we did, or cabinetry, but we
Right.
did just about everything else. But it was a lot of fun. So
It was a
people
lot
got
of fun.
to actually build something that they actually helped detail. And
Yeah.
if
Which
the
is pretty
dimensions
cool.
didn't work, you say, well, what are you going to do about it? You drew it.
That's right.
Now go build it. So,
Yep.
Yeah.
And then George was in that office for a short stint, maybe, I don't know, 4
Probably
years.
about 4 years.
That's what I'm guessing,
Yeah.
because I think he left around like 97 or so.
He left in the spring of 97.
97,
Yeah.
okay. My
He was going to
memory's not too
retire,
bad.
but we all kind of knew he never was going to 100% retire.
Yeah.
Yeah, he wouldn't know what to do with himself if he did.
Right.
I know how that feeling goes. I had my official retirement party, which I think you were both at in 2015.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
And I'm still here. So,
7 years later.
7 years later. It's hard to do,
Yeah,
especially
it
in this
is.
profession. I think it's just something that the older you get, the more, kind of acclaimed you get. And you can really work forever if
Sure
as
you
long as your
can.
mind is
Yeah.
good and you can hold up to the stamina.
Right.
It's like I say,
Right.
what am I going to do? Go home and watch The View all afternoon? I don't think so,
Yeah. Right.
So, and I don't play golf, and I can only cook so much before I weigh 400 pounds, so I ain't going to do that either. So, yeah, so George left, and he left the firm, and he retired, but he kind of kept putzing around. He kept doing some projects.
Yeah.
And he worked up till pretty much the day he passed on, didn't he?
Yeah, he did,
He
I
did,
think.
Yeah.
That's been 18 years.
Yeah. You did a nice tribute to him through the AIA, and
Yeah.
that was about, 3-4 years ago?
Well, I think it was 4 years ago as part of the archives, where
Yeah.
every year the AIA sort of highlights
Somebody.
somebody who's passed away and
Yeah.
kind of their influence on the profession and especially what they did locally.
Yeah, and you did, like you said, you did a lot of research.
Yeah, that's where I figured out at least 17 firms have spun off of all the great people we worked with over
That's
the years.
crazy.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, I can think of a bunch just as I sit here and
I
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
missed a few on top of that, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty amazing what happened.
And how did George pass on? I mean, I never heard
I think
the
he
story.
died in his sleep.
That's
didn't
that's the story I've heard.
I heard he was sitting in a chair right after Christmas and might have passed away. He was down in Tucson. at
Yeah.
Yeah, he was at Don and Anna Greta's.
house,
That's
but,
okay. That's the story
yeah,
I've heard.
it was Truly a shock to everybody.
Yeah.
he? Yeah.
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 He always looked healthy, but he always had some sort of heart issues.
Yeah. Well, I remember he had that one heart attack,
Right.
and then he was the president of AIA for a while, and that was kind
Right.
of crazy.
Stressful.
Yeah. And that's about when you left, right?
Right.
And you
right.
went to go work for the AIA,
Right. Martha Miller.
Martha Miller, yeah, and that
Yeah.
whole crew.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's funny. I got involved with AIA before I got my license because I thought, I might as well get involved and see if this will help me get my license somehow.
Right.
And before I knew it, I was the pro practice chairman for the state without a license. And I was teaching people how to pass the test. Do you remember that?
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's where I developed our little pieces thing that I used. I said, someone told me that's how they graded the test. They would actually lay the room pieces over your design and see if you met the program.
Oh.
And so I thought, well, I'm going to just use that. I'm going to start with that versus end with that. And so I developed that whole process because of the AI of the architect's test. Still do it today. Still use that process, and it works. Clients love it, because they just move the rooms around. And
Yeah.
But eventually I took the tests and passed them all. And 92 is when I got my license. So then I was official.
Right.
And which was one of the best moments of my life. I mean, that day
I'm
when
sure.
you go out to the mailbox and you see that envelope from the state board or whatever it's called, Board of Technical Registration, you open,
Right.
you think, should I open this or should I just throw it away and just get signed up for the test next year? And I remember I was living in the La Manana apartments across from the teepee.
Oh, I remember those. Yeah, I remember
This was
that.
after divorce number 1, so it becomes a blur at some point. But I remember opening that envelope and seeing that you are now a licensed architect. It was like one of the best feelings ever. Do you remember that moment, Brian?
I do, because when mine came in a few years earlier, Jerry Sealer was our office manager, and she came up and threw a big hug around there. She opened it.
Oh, they sent it to the office?
All the mail, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I always send everything to the office. That's the only place I'm at. So, yeah.
Yeah, that is a good moment, though, isn't it?
It is incredible, and I try to reinforce that with our younger staff, the importance of just getting that milestone.
Get it done.
Do
Yeah.
it. Get it behind.
I mean, you notice.
and
I mean, I
enjoy it.
notice a lot of people that have all the credentials, have got their degree, have been working with me for 12, 16 years, and still don't take the test.
Right.
I don't get it. It's like, just go take it. I never even studied for it. I just went down there and took
Well,
it.
I always say
Oh,
it
really?
can't be too difficult because you and I passed.
Yeah, that's what I tell them. I passed. I never went to school. I never even studied for it. And the day I took the drawing exam, which at that point was by hand, and you had to go down there, it was a 12-hour exam. I was 2 hours late for it because my divorce
Oh, gosh.
hearing or negotiation was that day. They scheduled it on the same day.
Oh, my gosh.
And I'm like, well, I'm not going to miss the test. So I showed up 2 hours late and still finished, and that's the year I passed it.
Wow.
So it's like, just go do it. If I could do that, you can pass it.
Well,
you know?
you could only do it once a year.
Right,
back in
at
the
that
day.
time. I think it's
Now-
twice a year now.
Yeah.
So
So
even
it was-
more reason to do
Yeah,
it.
Yeah, for
You
sure.
did it or you waited a whole year. So,
Yeah. And it's one of those things. I always use the analogy of the scarecrow in The Wizard of Oz. He was always smart, but until the wizard gave him the diploma,
Yeah.
then he realized he was smart.
Right.
But nothing changed. It's just now you
Yeah.
just had a piece of paper that said you were an architect.
Right.
But it does change your whole psychology. Don't you agree?
Absolutely.
That's why I tell people, go get it done.
Well, it's just
Yeah.
another. It's like respect. It's just
Right.
like, wow, all
Yeah.
this hard effort and all these dreams after all these many years all
Yep.
came together, and
Off
you
you
can
go.
check that off your list and keep going.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. So then by 99, George has been gone for a couple of years, and we were doing lots of big projects. We guys had movie theaters and big church campuses and stuff like all crazy. And I was going through some personal stuff again with wife number 2, or I was getting ready for wife number 2
Right.
actually. And I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to go check out. I'm going to go work at home. I just bought a cool little place at the Point Tapatio.
Yeah,
And
that was a cute
cool little
place.
studio, and I'm just like, you know what? I just want to work on 1 or 2 little projects a year and hang out by the pool with my dog Nacho and go climb North Mountain and kind of live. I was just about to turn 40, and I'd been at it for almost 20 years. I'm like, I'm just gonna chill. So I left in August of '99 and started this firm. And you were helping me with, because you'd been away from CCBG for a couple of years. You've been working at
Right.
the AIA and different
Right.
things. So you started helping me with correspondence. I would just send it to you. I think
Right.
I could send it to you by email by then.
Yeah, I think so by then, yeah.
And so you helped me there. I got the firm started. Before I knew it, I was just so busy. Had to get the office down at 12th Street in Campbell.
Right.
And it was shortly after that you came and actually worked in the office
Right.
for me, which
Yeah.
was great. Having you help with everything was a lot of fun. So it was great having you around my
Yeah,
office.
it was really fun. It was really fun.
We did some cool things, and then from there you moved on. What have you been doing since then, Dianne?
Well, I kind of retired. and I think many days maybe I should get a job because I'm busier now than I've ever been in my life.
You got 2 daughters, right?
I have 2 daughters and 1 great-grandchild, 3 grandchildren.
That's amazing.
1 great-grandchild.
Yep.
And it's...
and your husband Terry's an
my
architect.
husband is an architect, which is really fun.
You just can't get away from architects, can you?
No, and I really like architects. I love architecture. I discovered that's something that I probably should have done
How interesting.
because I really, really liked it.
Yeah.
I loved every aspect of it.
Well, you saw a lot of it from a lot of
Yeah.
different angles, that's for
Right,
sure.
right.
So, and your husband's retiring, you said.
Yes, he's retiring on the 4th of March.
Terry
That'll be his-
Kleber.
That's his last
Is
day.
that right? Good for him.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Yeah.
Get out of the rat race.
Yeah.
sometime.
So, Brian, you're still going strong with CCBG, and I got to commend you for that. I mean, when you just heard the story of how many name changes there were between when I joined in 83 or 82 to 87, I mean, there was like 4 name changes just in that short period
Yeah.
of time. And now you've maintained the same firm for how many years?
Well, I've been there almost 41 years.
Yeah.
now, So.
Yep. But it's been CCBG since 87.
Yeah, we went from the long name to the initials.
Yeah.
We didn't want to sound like a law firm. We wanted to sound like a design firm.
Right.
So we changed it to the initials, and it's going to stay the initials probably, till I go out feet first.
Right.
At that point. So, but there's not a day in my life I don't want to get up and go do it. So, not
Yeah.
No,
once.
that's great.
That's
Not
great.
once.
That's great.
Yeah, and you married to Loretta. I was fortunate to be your
Yeah.
best man at the wedding.
I remember.
Yeah, I was more nervous than you
There
were.
was a story behind that. So we got married 36 years ago at the Hermosa Inn, and it was a late morning wedding. And Mark, you were my best man,
Yep.
and you were so nervous that I had to take you.
Weddings
to the
made me
bar.
nervous.
I had to take you
Really?
to the bar and buy you a drink at
Yep.
my wedding.
I
so
remember
you calmed
that.
down so you could.
Do-
So we get on with the wedding, and then about 2 weeks later, the Hermosa Inn burned down. And the funny thing was, so did our bar tab. So we don't know whether we owed them money or they owed us money.
Oh
we'll
my
never
God.
know. But
Those were
the good old days.
That was a beautiful wedding. A lot of fun, and you and Loretta are still happily
Still
married.
happily married.
You have
yeah,
a beautiful
30.
son.
Jackson is 24, and he has a master's of urban planning, working for a law firm in Tucson doing entitlement work.
That's
Working
awesome.
His tail off. Yeah.
That's good.
Okay, so I have a story about Jackson.
All right, let's hear this.
I have a granddaughter, McLean. She goes by Lainey. And Lainey went to school at Veritas for a while. And she kept talking about this Jackson Cassidy. And I thought, oh, no, it
What
can't
are the
be.
odds?
It can't be. And sure enough, it was. We were at some event, and there were Brian and Loretta watching their son, and we'd gone to see our granddaughter.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
We were talking about
It
that,
is.
just how the energy just comes full
Right.
circle sometimes. And like Brian, you grew up in Denver also, and
I
I did too.
Yeah.
You grew up in Inglewood. I was in North Glen, opposite end of the city. But we were both avid Bronco fans, and
I'm still a Bronco fan.
we used
It's
to
hard,
love
but I'm still a
getting
Bronco
together and watch the games. And
Yeah.
I mean, so that we always had that background, amongst the two of us too. So again, you never know where that energy
Right.
just kind of pulls you in and makes things happen. So as you look back, I mean, Brian, first before I go there, I mean, you guys are working on some pretty incredible projects. You're pretty dang busy right now, right?
It's crazy.
Because you do a lot of
We're
multifamily.
doing a lot of the high-density multifamily, and we have and I couldn't even tell you how many projects we're touching in some respect, but we have about 2,700 housing units under construction and at least 5,000
Wow.
more.
Well,
in
thanks for making
design
time for me today.
right now. So, yeah. I have a great crew, though.
That's what it takes.
We have grown slowly and methodically, and we've made some great hires, and we still keep that original culture of work hard, play hard.
Yep.
You're on the honor system. We're not breathing down somebody's neck on missing something or you're over budget. It's like do it right,
Yep.
get it done.
Do your best.
Yeah.
And we still run a lean operation where we have 25 people. All are either architects or interior designers, and we don't have a single administrative position.
Right.
Really?
I fear if we did, we'd probably be twice as busy as we are now. So.
It's interesting.
But it's been fun, and my focus now, we all did custom homes when we were young architects, and I kind of ran with the religious practice
Yep.
for a number of years, and we built up a really great portfolio of work throughout the Southwest.
Yep.
And so forth, and then always wanted to do urban architecture. That is why we moved the firm downtown back
Right.
29 years ago into Roosevelt Row, and it was not called Roosevelt Row because there was nothing going on. We were the only viable business in that area.
I remember we'd walk to lunch, and we'd walk down to the
5,
Arizona
6
Center sometimes.
Yeah, well,
but there was just land.
Yeah, there was nowhere
Yeah.
to go. Yeah, it obviously, if you drove down there today, it's incredible transformation, and
It
we
is
had a
crazy.
little part of that, and it's always been a lot of fun. So,
Yeah.
my passion is creating world-class cities right now.
Cool.
Whatever that means. A lot of it's higher density, urban, mixed-use projects, and a lot of warehouse renovations down in the warehouse district. And
That's
so
cool.
that's really where my passion lies. So bigger, more complex projects that are going 90 miles an hour.
That's awesome. I mean,
That's great.
Phoenix has transformed incredibly.
Yeah.
And I hope, I look at the rest of, like I go to San Francisco, LA, and Portland now, and they're just pig pens. They're just horrible.
Yeah.
And those used to, San Francisco and Portland for me used to be like architects' playground. And Seattle.
Yeah.
Go there and it's just fun because you could walk everywhere and it's beautiful and there's great architect. I was there in San Francisco 2-3 years ago, and I wouldn't go there again. It's just,
I've heard other people say that.
oh yeah,
It's
it was
unfortunate,
horrible.
But they
Yeah.
could clean that up if they wanted to. But they don't have the political will to find a solution to the homeless and the crime
Yeah,
and
that's
everything.
the problem.
Yeah.
And we're hoping Phoenix doesn't become that. We
Right.
have,
That's where I'm going with
what's
this.
exciting is we have probably the largest major U.S. city that has the most room to reinvent itself than
Right.
anybody by
Right.
a long shot.
Yeah, and we got to do it. I think I've been telling people I think Phoenix can become probably one of the most incredible cities in the world. We've got the opportunity to do it. I would love hearing what you're doing because that's to me is just
Well,
so awesome.
I just went all in for downtown.
Yeah,
and
that's great.
Just got active in every little thing that
You did.
could. We started banging the drum for urbanism, and now I think I'm on my 4th drum from that perspective, and just help people. Every week I talk to 2 or 3 people and give them 20 minutes to an hour, just sort of lay out a vision of what our downtown can be,
Right.
and so forth, and what some of the opportunities are. So
Yeah.
we're just trying to get more people to
Experience
move
it.
downtown, and now it's on a great roll, and it's sort of feeding upon itself.
Right.
And the food and beverage scene in downtown is incredible,
It's great.
even with all the COVID and a lot of people
Yeah.
not working
Yeah.
in their office yet. It's still pretty amazing.
That's what brings these things alive, isn't it? When you
Yeah.
have a reason to go
Exactly.
downtown other than
Yeah.
other than work. If you have a
Yeah.
place to go down there and
Something to
entertain.
do, you can walk around. You don't always have to drive your car 2 blocks.
Right.
You can just walk there, and
Right.
so forth. So
And that's why it's important that it be kept clean and be kept safe so that you can
Right.
do those type of things. Otherwise, I don't care how many restaurants if you're walking
People
through a
won't go
pile
to
of
them.
you know what, you're not going to go.
Right.
You know?
yeah,
so-
and we don't have that here. We have homeless challenges like everybody, but
Right.
because of our hot summers, our homeless issue is not as dire as other major cities.
Right.
Interesting.
Right.
So looking back, isn't it amazing how the world, technology, and architecture has changed? When you look back to the
yeah.
Van Houten residence and not that was a bad house, but just, the technology of what goes into a house or into a project that you're talking about, and just even the way we produce a house. We're talking, we have consultants across the world that help us bring these things together. And so everything now just moves so quickly, doesn't it?
Yeah, because my client base has gone from doing private residences to doing commercial real estate, and
Right.
that's a whole nother world and a whole nother speed that projects
Right.
move. And
Because there's time and money with them.
oh, absolutely,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so our goal is to give them the best possible outcome, help them navigate through all the municipalities, and get these things under construction. And now we're fighting, just prolific budget escalations on projects.
It's
which is
gotten
really hard.
crazy lately,
It's
hasn't
almost-
it?
Yeah, it's just nuts.
Yeah.
That-
And what about from your standpoint, how has the bureaucracy been in terms of dealing with the cities and stuff like that?
Well, the cities here, anybody, we get to work with a lot of developers that aren't from Phoenix, and they love how much easier it is to work here than maybe LA or Chicago or other places like that. But our municipalities are as bogged down as our designers, engineers, and workers, and things take longer now to get
Yeah.
entitled, and that can be frustrating. But
Yeah.
we understand it's a numbers game. There's more work that wants to happen than there are people to do it.
Yep.
Stand in line.
Stand in line. Yeah, and like you said, prices are going up. We just had a house come in at $1,000 a square foot.
Oh, you're kidding.
And I remember the first one I think I did was $65 a square foot back in '83.
Wow.
It's
oh my
like
gosh.
So what did your clients say when?
surprisingly they said,
So-
"Let's get going. I don't want this to go up any higher. Go as fast as you can,
Or it's 1,200 a
and
foot.
let's add another garage."
Oh,
you know?
no
While we're at
kidding.
it,
Yeah. So, at some point, there's going to be pushback,
Yeah.
and we're seeing it a little bit. We're starting to see some people go, I'm not going to build for that. That's ridiculous. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I can't argue with you,
Yeah.
right now. It's crazy
Yeah,
what
it
prices
is.
have just done in the last 12 months.
Yeah. And a lot of our clients just sort of pinched their nose and said, I can't stop now. I got to keep going.
Right.
The end
Right.
game will be worth all this effort.
Right. And then just, like we were talking about before with the typewriter, we
Right.
had the little Croy machine. Remember
Right.
where you did your
I
lettering?
remember
You
when
had
the
to print it.
when you got the Croy machine. It was right
And
after
I'm
I
sure
started.
no one knows what the hell a Croy machine
I
is.
sure
I don't think
Yeah.
so.
So basically, when you had to do pretty graphics with letters and writing, you could write it by hand, or you could use the Croy machine, which had these wheels that would print them on sticky tape.
Different
and
fonts.
And then you would paste it onto the drawing. Okay, there was
Right.
no computers that would do any of this for you.
Right.
And that's when I got my Mac that actually could do that. And
Yeah.
I started using sticky backs that was the level of technology we were at back then.
We,
Right.
we perfected the art of cut and paste.
Oh, you and
Yeah,
I
for
used to be
sure.
like the masters at the Croy machine. Remember, we used to
yeah.
have races, like who could do this the fastest. I go 30 seconds. All right, dude, that was fast, And then we got the first computers, and then you got the first fax machine.
Oh, I remember. I got a lot of grief for getting a fax machine. What in the world would we ever need that for?
Right.
Right.
Looking back, that was probably the right attitude.
Oh, it was so
Well,
cool.
and then when Federal
had
Express
to.
was there,
Yeah.
Yeah. Or then when the email came, and you could
Yeah.
actually, send something
Yeah.
off right away, and you get it that day, right?
Right.
We used to do, we'd go out to the field, we'd bring you the tape recorder, you would transcribe it.
right?
That would take a day or so, but you were fast. I'm not saying
Yeah.
you were slow. It would take time.
Yeah.
And then it would go in the mail.
Right.
And you would send it, and it would take 3 days
Right.
for them to get it. And if they had a response, they'd put it in the mail
Yeah.
and send it back.
Right.
So something would take like a week, 2 weeks just to
To get it all straightened
get it
out.
all straightened out, and that happens in a matter of minutes now.
Minutes
Yeah.
now. Yeah, we
Yeah.
have projects where there's 8 or 9 people on the construction side of the contractor's office, all
Right.
bombarding us with RFIs and info
Yeah.
and submittals, and you got to be
Stay up to it.
Got to get it done.
Yeah.
It's crazy. That part has changed significantly. And I wonder, 20 years from now, where will we be? Where will this all be? I keep thinking smell-o-vision is around the corner, and sound-o-vision, as you
Yeah.
walk people through. Do you guys do any of the?
No, we're not, like the augmented reality.
Yeah,
and
augmented
virtual
reality.
Not yet.
You're not in the metaverse yet.
We're going to be, but we're not. We've never been at the leading edge of technology. We're a little bit behind the curve from that perspective, and partly because we're just so busy we can't
Yeah.
figure out how to do some of that stuff. But I think the future of architecture, especially in Phoenix, people still have to live somewhere.
Right.
People still love people and the experiences of being with people. And
Yeah.
I think what's going to be the most interesting is what is the long-term fate of the office?
Right.
What might it look like? It's probably going to be a hybrid model of people
Right.
able to come in and work remote from almost anywhere.
Exactly.
Going forward.
Yeah. I think it will
lot of
be a
people like
hybrid.
that.
And it'd
Yeah.
be interesting to see how the design of the office changes because of that. It's not going to be the same layout.
Right.
It's just going to be totally different. I think there may be more bullpens or places where people can congregate and
Yeah.
spearhead. You don't need a cubicle because you can do
Right.
that at
I don't
home.
have-
or
Right.
in your car.
I don't
Yeah.
have a private office.
Yeah.
Nobody in our office has a private office.
I do.
Well,
I use
I've-
it to take naps. So
Yeah.
I've heard of offices where you have to register when you're coming in to make sure that there's a computer available, and that's so somebody keeps track of the schedule, or it's on the computer, and then you know when you can come in to have a space. Otherwise, you work from home.
yeah. No, it's going to be very, very different. That's for sure.
So,
So
Mark, how's your CAD skills?
still don't know CAD, I was thinking about this the other day. I think that was one of the best things that ever happened to me that I didn't learn CAD because it forced me to delegate.
Yeah.
We were talking about earlier,
Right.
some people that just don't know how to delegate. I think the fact that I had to delegate, I had no choice, really helped me stay in the macro, helped me stay, on the design and dealing with the client, sketching,
Right.
all those things which clients love. I mean, they still love
Oh
us
yeah.
to hand sketch, and
Right.
obviously learned that from George.
Yeah, and I'm in the same boat. I don't have 5 minutes of CAD experience in my entire life.
You don't either.
I have a pencil and a Sharpie and a phone.
Yeah.
It works, right?
Yeah, and I have great people to work with.
Yeah.
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 I
Kinda
remember
get 'em started.
one time you were on a trip, and I went through all your basket and all this kind of stuff, and I found all your little buff sketches, and I copied them all, and I put together a book.
I kind of remember that.
That was the first sketchbook, or the coffee table book.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then whoever came after me took it further.
Yeah, there's piles of them back there, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Gobs
But
and gobs
I've
of
always
sketchbooks.
thought that the sketches are by far the neatest thing.
Yeah, it's fun to see, from the sketch to the finished product, the transformation,
Right.
And just
Yeah.
how it all, and it's really cool. And that was something we learned from George, is that a sketch you can do right on the site, in a second, in front of a client, versus we'll put it in CAD, we'll see in 2 weeks.
Yeah, that just doesn't work.
Or if you're in the field and it's 120 million degrees, and the framer says, "Can you just show me what this is going to look like?" And you can sketch it on the side of a 2x4.
Right.
So I think those are skills that I really try to instill in my staff, but they look at me like I'm kind of a crazy dinosaur when I tell them that.
Yeah.
Do you see that, Brian?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, most people can't sketch anymore.
The challenge with CAD programs is there's no true scale. You might have proportion, but not scale.
Yeah,
And so
well,
that's what we try to.
and that's
instill in
evidenced by
our
some of the
younger
projects
people.
you see out there. Just the scale and
Yeah,
proportion is
exactly.
just idiotic.
And we have
it's horrible.
We have younger staff that actually know Revit in these programs really well. They're just not as strong designing, and then our senior people can design but can't do Revit.
Yeah.
So it's,
It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's how you pull together.
what do we do next?
Well, and I love, like, my iPad. I have all my drawings, in Dropbox or wherever, and I can just pull it up. And I can sketch right over the top of it anywhere, whether I'm on a plane
Right.
or in a car. I'm trying not to do it when I'm driving, but and then you just hit send and off it goes.
Right.
So the technology is cool, and it is going to be interesting to see where it goes.
Yeah, I think so too.
In 10 years. So I think people will be just working from anywhere, and I think you'll be able to pull from talent. You might be more collective talent that you can just pull for given tasks.
Right.
Where you just go to a website, say, I need this, becomes a big worldwide bullpen
Yeah.
of people, that you just do stuff with. Who knows? It's going to change, though. All right. Well, this was so much fun, you guys. This was awesome. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to do this today.
Thank
you guys
you.
have had such an impact on my life, and just any moment I get to spend with the two of you, for me, is very, very special. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I mean, like when you walked in the lobby this morning,
Yeah.
I just saw the two of you, and it's like, it just brings back a flood of just great, great, great memories.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
So-
Well, you're a pretty great guy to work for,
Well,
and a good friend.
try to keep
Great guy
going.
to work with.
And I like to cook
I
now
miss,
and
I
then.
miss those years.
I do
kind of
too.
Went down two different paths. But,
Yeah.
it's still fun, and you're doing incredible work. And congratulations on hitting your 40th.
Yeah,
coming up here
40th.
in a couple weeks. Here.
Yep. You just
Yeah.
passed yours
Wow.
a year
Yeah,
ago.
Mine will be 41 this summer.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I'm not slowing down. I'm having too much fun.
That's
so,
good. That's what it's all about, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
When I don't want to get up and do it, I'll cut back.
Yep. There's a few more pounds on us and a little less hair. We're growing more hair on our face and our beard than on the
my-
top of our head.
My ears,
You still
my
have some.
nose, and,
Yeah. So hopefully we'll all keep going. Best of health
Yeah.
to both of you, and
Thanks. You
happiness, and let's just keep rolling. Like my dad says, here we go, right?
too. Yeah. Right. For sure. Okay.
Great.
All right. Thanks. How do we get in touch with you two on social media? You're on social media at all, Diane?
I'm on Instagram. I
'Kay.
quit Facebook, but I'm on Instagram.
All right. We'll put your tagline in our story
Okay.
notes. And Brian, your CCBG.
Yeah, I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn.
Yep. Perfect.
Not active. I look at it, but I don't add a lot of content.
Yep.
I just don't have the time. So
Yep. You're too busy.
It's fun.
Well, thanks so much, you guys. Great job.
Good job, Mark. This was fun.
Yeah. It was great.
Thank you, Brian and Diane. It is always so special to be with the two of you and relive those days at George's office. And what I love best is when I hear your voices, all those memories come flooding back in. I feel so much emotion from this, as it has been such a journey filled with amazing triumphs and definitely some challenging moments. I wish you both great health and continued joy and success in your lives, and I hope we can always get time together. You are both super special people in my life, and I owe you both so much. So thank you, and God bless to both of you. Okay, stay tuned for the follow-up podcast I have with my Candelaria Design partners as we visit and look at where I am now, some 40 years later since that first day at George Christiansen's office in 1982. It's a fun podcast with some interesting insights as to where we are going with Candelaria Design, so I invite you to give it a listen. Okay, I want to say a big thank you for all the subscribes and reviews. Please take 5 minutes to give us a review. And if you do, we will enter you in our drawing where you will receive free round-trip airfare for our Candelaria Design tours. Seriously, you cannot lose here. So go right now and give us a rating and review along with a subscribe, and then email or direct message me that you did so, and we will get your name in the hopper for this drawing. We do our best to inspire living in everything we do, from our podcast to our cooking classes to our tours, and of course with our Candelaria Design homes. Okay, have a great week, everyone. Let's stay safe and let's all live our lives with love, compassion, grace, and positivity. See you next week. Because Inspiring Living is all about the people and the organizations that inspire us, we are excited to have Monogram Appliances as one of our sponsors. Anytime we do a new kitchen or a kitchen remodel, Monogram Appliances are what we recommend to our client. Their appliances are the definition of luxury, meticulously detailed using the finest materials and an ownership experience that is second to none. This is how Monogram is always thinking ahead and inspiring and elevating the kitchen experience. Because at Monogram, they don't just elevate one thing, they elevate everything. I want to say a big thank you to my good friends at Stockett Tile and Granite Company, where your project is our priority. I want to thank the Stockett team, along with so many others who contributed to the success of our fabulous demonstration kitchen in our new Candelaria Design office expansion. You will have to check out online our video cooking classes, and our kitchen is amazing. I've had the pleasure of working with the Stockett team for nearly 40 years on many spectacular projects, and trust me, they are the epitome of excellence when it comes to tile, marble, and granite work, bar none. Their skill and customer service is impeccable, and the bottom line is they are just good people. I have traveled with and dined with and just had good times, both personally and professionally, with Dave Stockett and his lovely wife, Becky, and they are the best. When it comes to your next tile and stone project, make sure Stockett Tile and Granite is a part of your team. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed our podcast. We encourage you to write a review, screenshot it, and share it with your friends. Please instant message it to me and follow us on Instagram and Facebook. We thank you for listening, and we look forward to sharing more insights to inspiring living next week.